you very much. All right, so today I'm going to talk to you about, well, I'm going to tell you all about Screaming Frog's custom JavaScript snippets. And I should highlight, by the way, they're not paying me for it. I have no affiliation to Screaming Frog. I do use many other crawlers. I know Patrick from Sidebob, I've used your tool. I love it as well. OnCrawl, Lumar, yeah. He hasn't paid me out to say that. But yeah, so I found myself, particularly in recent months, using this custom JavaScript snippets by Screaming Frog quite a bit, and I honestly feel it's one of the most underappreciated sort of functionalities, tools that we have within our industry, and it's just not getting enough attention. And we really want to bring to the forefront and hopefully sort of show you, open your eyes as to what it can do, particularly because so many of us have got Screaming Frog installed on our laptop. It is accessible for many of us, so why not use it? It's really, really powerful, which I'll show in a moment. Now, just before I start, out of curiosity, with a show of hands, how many of you have used this custom JavaScript functionality in Screaming Frog? Nice. Okay, so more than I thought. Surprisingly, Patrick. Well, no, not really, but you know, trigger testing.
Got to keep your eyes open.
Exactly. Cool. So actually, it's more than I thought, which is really good. I'd just like to kind of address something before we start. Some of you saw the word JavaScript and thinking, oh, not for me. What if I don't know JavaScript? And we are in the year 2025, you know, devs are no longer needed, we can vibe code through just about everything, anything we need. So really, if you can write using natural language, you can code as well. I think more than anything, it's understanding the capabilities of the tool, knowing where you want to end up with, and reverse engineering the parts you need to get there. If you can put that to your favorite LLM, whether it's ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, whoever, it'll spit out the code for you. Now, there might be a series of iterations to get it right, to get it to do what you want it to do, but I wouldn't let that be a barrier. Definitely give it a go. Okay, don't be afraid of this JavaScript. By the way, for transparency, my JavaScript knowledge is not great. I like to say I know enough to be dangerous, but not beyond that. I heavily rely on LLMs, okay, and it does the job. So let's begin. Just a really quick background on JavaScript snippets. For those that haven't heard or used it before, it was launched in version 20 of Screaming Frog in May 2024. So we've had it for just over a year now. It had, as you can see, the LinkedIn screenshot there, had a really, really positive response from the SEO community. And in a nutshell, what you can sort of simplify what is JavaScript snippets. What are they? And essentially, they're just snippets of JavaScript code that you can run on process URLs as you're running your crawl. Sounds quite simplistic. I will unpack that in a moment. But two important points to make. You can only use them on 200 OK URLs and only on HTML files, so no PDFs, for example. So just something to bear in mind. And what kind of things can you do with them? Okay, so you can do things like extract custom data from a web page, stuff that the data you don't normally get out of the crawl. So you can do all that. You can communicate with APIs like your favorite LLM, like ChatGPT, for example. You can connect to external libraries using APIs. You can modify, clean up data. You can do all sorts of really, really cool stuff. And actually, you have a library of system snippets that come with Screaming Frog that you can start using straight away as well. So that's quite a good starting point. I'll take you through my personal experience of using JavaScript snippets, and you can see this very scientific graph here showing my excitement level over time, starting from May 2024 up until now. And I split into three phases really, because phase one is when it was first launched, the community was really excited. I thought, wow, Screaming Frog, you can connect it to ChatGPT, you can do all sorts of cool stuff. And then I sort of gave it a bit of a go, and in all honesty, I was a bit disappointed initially. I thought, okay, I can connect it, but what can I do with a prompt? Like, particularly with the TechSEO work that I do, I just didn't find that many uses. Perhaps it was a bit more content strategy, maybe a bit more, but initially I perhaps didn't give it enough chance. The other thing, I saw a really big buzz initially by the community. I thought people cleverer than me would probably come out, like on LinkedIn and Twitter, whatever, X, sorry, and probably share some really cool code snippets, and I'll be able to kind of use it. And that buzz really quickly died off, at least that was my perception at the time. So that kind of goes to phase two. You can see this big drop in disappointment. That lasted a few months, and then I don't know what made me sort of give it another go. Said I'll try it again, and I sort of connected two different, like a script I saw someone share online. I gave it a go, it worked. Then I kind of added another feature to it, and just creating this mini sort of workflow, and that was almost like the light bulb moment to realize, holy crap, this is actually really powerful. I can do a lot of stuff with it. And since then, phase 3 has just been me experimenting, pushing the limits, seeing what can be done with it. And I'll show you some use cases. I picked 3 use cases. They're a bit more advanced, particularly because I want to show how far you can push it. So I'll get to that in a moment. But this is the way I picture JavaScript snippets to work now. Okay. Interestingly, it doesn't work with, so you can't communicate, when you write JavaScript code, you can't communicate with the main crawl data. So that's a separate database, it doesn't work, okay? And the way I sort of over time start picturing it is very much, you have the main frog here, which is the good old screaming frog that we all use and love, and then this backpack, which is sort of bolted on, that's your JavaScript snippets. You kind of carry it with you with every URL that you want to crawl. And and you can do a lot of stuff with it. And in fact, this should hopefully highlight this. You can have a real good time doing all sorts of crazy like mini workflows, automation, really, really cool stuff in that little backpack that you're carrying with you everywhere. Okay? So this is in my head. Don't ask why, but this is how I picture it. But it's important to note that there are some limitations. Yes, JavaScript functionality does allow us to take Screaming Frog, essentially extend to way beyond just a standard SEO crawler, but it has got limitations. So for example, if you have used Python, Node.js type scraping libraries, or like some QA automation type systems like Playwright, Selenium, Puppeteer, you still definitely need them, particularly if you do some heavy duty web scraping. Screaming Frog is great, but you are quite limited with what you can do. Like the DOM extraction is quite limited. You can only really use it for HTML, so things like JSON, XML data, you can't really latch onto and extract the data. Yeah, there's a bunch of quite limited in a way. If you want to do like build a whole pipeline with retries, concurrency set, all this kind of stuff, you really need a proper web scraping tool for it. But as I see it, I think that's actually okay. Because really Screaming Frog is an SEO crawler first. If you need something to do a bit more sort of proper heavy duty, you need to dive into the code or find a system that does it for you. It's just meant to be an accessible SEO tool with a UI that we can straight away jump on and get the SEO data that we need. But yeah, so I just thought before I jump into the use cases, which would be like the main bulk of this presentation, in case anyone hasn't used it before, I just thought I'll really, really quickly recap how to set it up. You can easily go to the Screaming Frog documentation, so I don't want to dwell on this for too long, but essentially what you need to do is when you start your crawl, you go step 1, so you go to configuration, spider, and rendering. So basically you want to turn your rendering onto JavaScript. So by default, you can see there it's set to text only, so switch it to JavaScript to run JavaScript snippets. After that, you can go to your custom JavaScript dashboard, and to do so, you go to configuration, custom, and select custom JavaScript. And that takes you to the custom JavaScript dashboard that you see on the right. And on that dashboard, you basically have 2 options. You can click on Add from Library. So if you have, you can actually save some snippets of yours. You can have user library or the system libraries where Screaming Frog does come out of the box with some snippets you can start using straight away. Or you can click on the other button, which is the Add button, to start a brand new snippet, which is what I'll do here. And it adds this row, and all you need to do is give it a name, and then you click on the JS button there. And this brings up the code editor, which is basically where the magic happens. So you have on the left-hand side where the code, where you add all the code, all the JavaScript, and then on the right-hand side you have the JS tester, where you debug all your code. You can see at the bottom is a URL field where you can sort of test on the go. I use it a lot when I create JavaScript snippets. It's incredibly useful. If you want, you can even take the show console log, so you can get some console data as well to get even more feedback, which is really, really useful. But that's pretty much it, all you have to do really. So let's get to the interesting use cases, okay? So we know how to use it now. Now, the first thing I thought I'll demonstrate is multi-prompting. So most of the time, I know most people use, well, in this case, I should say, what I decided to do is, just for pure demonstration purposes, is use AI to create better, more engaging product descriptions. So, of course, some of you may have done this before already using AI for this. But I thought I'd try and do it with a slight twist to just show you how far you can push screen frog functionality with JavaScript snippets. So what I've done first is taken just a normal product detail page, and what I've done there is, of course, you can scrape the whole page, all the content, but I thought I'd be a bit more tactical, and I scraped the relevant product information I need. So for example, I scraped the title, some bullet points that showing the product highlights, the product description there. Now, of course, it can be even fancy if you want, and maybe scrape like the reviews for some user-generated input, that kind of stuff. But the main thing is we want to scrape the data. After that, I make 2 API calls, simultaneous API calls. So at the same time, I connect to Gemini and to Claude, and I basically feed them all this data, and I say, use that data to come up with a better version of the product description. Pretty simple, okay? And you can see on the right-hand side, you have the output there. Now, obviously, I'm not expecting you to read this right here, right now. I will share the slide deck if you really want to read it. I do like my output in JSON, which I do spell out to the LLMs. Just easy for me to filter and read. But yeah, so Gemini response is there, Claude response is there. I think both are pretty good. I'm no copywriter, but I think the output is not bad. You could probably cherry pick the best parts of both and decide what you want to do with it, maybe merge in some way. But I thought I'm actually going to take it a step further. Okay. So what I've done next is made a third API call. This time I just sent an API call just to Claude, and with what I call a jealousy prompt. And I basically said to Claude, not bad, but I'm surprised. Gemini crushed it and was a 9 out of 10. I thought you were the better LLM. What's going on? And then I said, for reference, here's the product description that you came up with. And where's the yellow here? Now don't forget we are working with API. So unlike the web app or the desktop app that has the same context window and they can see previous chats, this time it's like starting with a clean slate. So I have to, with this variable they call Claude Desk or Claude Description, I basically feed back to Claude its original output. And then I say, and here's what Gemini wrote as an FYI, and I feed Gemini's output. And then I say, see if you can do better. So in summary, I'll just say, Gemini crushed it, you did shit. See if you can do a better job, okay? And by the way, I didn't create this prompt. This is by a guy called Greg Eisenberg. I stumbled upon him on YouTube. He's got a really cool channel about like vibe coding and marketing and stuff, so definitely check him out. He found this weird jealousy prompt does give you better output. I don't know why. I found the same in most instances it does. Weird. I can't explain it. But this is what the end result looks like. So you can see this is the code that I've put in. Obviously it goes a bit further. You have the product data that I scraped at the top. And then in red, I kind of made it a bit larger so you can see this is the final output, the improved or quote-unquote improved output. Which, yeah, was the final stage. And interestingly, just as a little tip, I do use OpenRouter.ai, which is a really, really good service, credit-based service, which you have access to all the models, all the LLM models, and it's very easy for me to just change the model name and replace them on, Gemini, Claude, whatever I want, ChatGPT, etc. So yeah, so you can see we scraped the data, sent 2 API calls, got the data back, made another API call to get the final output. So we built like this really nice workflow. Now, next one, internationalization, every tech SEO's favorite subject, I'm sure. So this is actually one that I've created probably about a couple of weeks ago actually for a client of mine. They trade in over 50 markets, it's a very large site, and they have a lot of issues with content in the wrong language. Unfortunately, because it's down to the local markets to kind of translate a lot of the content. There's a lot of stuff inconsistent, so appearing in the wrong language. So I wanted to take stock of where we are with it. And I thought, how can I tackle this? So I used 3 snippets for it, actually. The first one, it's really simple, actually. So I just wanted to scrape the language attribute from the opening HTML tag, as you can see there. So lang equal en. I wanted to scrape the en value from the HTML tag. That's nice and easy. Next, I wanted to use the subfolder of the URL structure to find the language and the country. So in this example, you can see example.com/JAJP, so I just picked up the Japanese, and then Japan is Japan. So we have that lined up as well. And then the last bar, which is probably the most sort of interesting one, is what I've done is scrape the first 150 words of the main content of the page, so not including the header or the footer, etc. And I sent that over to Gemini, and I just said detect the language. So I just want one word response, English, French, Spanish, etc. And that's all I need. And this is actually the final output. So you can see here you have the HTML lang, you have the language, the country, and then the last column there is the extract 150 words with the language detection. And I highlighted in red there, a few red boxes to show where I found some inconsistencies. So like English Brazil, but it's in Portuguese. French Luxembourg in English. Okay, so I've done that for just over 5,000 URLs. And because I used the Gemini 1.5 Flash model, which did a perfectly decent job, the whole thing cost me 6 cents. So it's a very cost-effective way of doing things, really, really cheap. Again, using OpenRouter. And something I don't know if you notice, for French Luxembourg, it does say the hreflangs FRBE, which is actually for French Belgium. Still in the process of fixing that, thank you, the devs, a month ago. Apparently it's been fixed, waiting for the next deployment. Weirdly enough, we have French Belgium already, so why we decided to go for another one, no idea. But yeah, spotted that, and yeah, hopefully should be fixed soon. But yeah, this is a really simple use case, but really, really effective to kind of look at that all the pages you have for your site at scale. And then the very last use case I want to show you is probably the most complex one I've tackled. It's still not finished. It's kind of like I'm still marinating my head of where I can take this. But something that I started working on, and for internal linking, and it's essentially keyword detection for internal linking. So it uses a similar method to what I've used, I'm sure many of you have used, to find internal linking opportunities. So perhaps use Screening Frog search functionality to add a bunch of words and to see if they're found on a page, or maybe use the search operator on Google with your domain name and then in quotation mark the keyword you're looking for. It's to use a similar methodology, but takes it up a level. So to show you, there's a lot going on, so I'll kind of explain the highlights of what the script does. Well, essentially what I've done here is added some keywords to a JavaScript array. Really simple. I used, as my guinea pig URL, I've used a really, really boring privacy notice page. And I use words like data, security, compliance, GDPR, consent. I know them found quite a bit on that page. So again, this shows you how nice it is to use that JavaScript tester to debug the code and see what you get back as a result. And so yeah, so I've just put in the keywords I'm after, and then as the script runs, what it does then, it starts to chunk the content. So essentially what I'm doing here is creating chunks. I can actually say how much I want, but we're aiming for roughly 300 words per chunk, and ideally a minimum of 3, and a maximum of 10 chunks of content. And the reason why I want to chunk the content is because, particularly with internal linking, each chunk gets assigned a number to chunk 1, chunk 2, chunk 3. So if I found the keyword that I'm looking for, if it's in chunk 1, I know it's really, really high up the page, whereas if it's in chunk 7, I know it's pretty low. Again, from an SEO point of view, higher the better. So it just helps with that sort of evaluation. And then I assign some scores. So I say, well, if the keyword is found in a HTML heading, so for example, H1, I'll give it a score of 5. H2, I'll give it a score of 4, etc., etc. Also, the chunks themselves get a score as well. So the maximum gets a 3. So chunk 1 will get a score of 3, all the way to the bottom, whereas chunk 10 will get a score of 1. So we score the keywords that we found based on where they are. And the last concept to highlight, and I'll explain why this is quite important, I use a tree walker to scrape the page, and what that essentially means, it refers to the tree walker API in JavaScript. But essentially, so unlike a standard pretty basic crawler, where it treats all the characters of the code the same and essentially just pattern matching, just looking to extract whatever the pattern is that you're looking for, with a tree crawler, or tree walker, sorry, it's similar to Googlebot, where it actually builds the DOM tree, or the document object model, so it understands all the nodes on the page. It understands the relationships of the parent, child, sibling relationship between all the nodes. And you're able to basically walk, travel across the DOM tree, backwards, forwards, up and down, and it gives you a lot of flexibility. It does take more compute power, but it's really, really powerful. And I'll explain in a minute why I've done that. So this is the final output that we get, or an example, because I actually got quite a bit of output from here. So the first red box here, as you can see, I found the keyword data, and it's in a sentence called international data transfers. Context, I'll explain that in a moment. And it was found in heading H3, so it was found in H3 and part of chunk 7. So it's quite low down the page, but it got a score of 4.6. So as you can see, H3 gets a score of 3, and from the chunks, chunk 7 gets a 1.66. So together it's 4.66, nice. Same again, the keyword data was found, second red box, it was found in a much longer sentence. And this is where the tree walker methodology comes in, because what I'm able to do is say to use the logic within the script, is say, well, if you found the keyword data, as it's done here, I want you to go back to the beginning of our sentence and then script the whole sentence for me until the next full stop. Now, obviously with some sentences that can be quite long, almost like a paragraph, okay? And this is where the context comes in, because as you can see here it says let context window equal 30. It's just a variable to say, give me like a shorter versions of this, of the sentence. I want 30 characters before the keyword and 30 characters after the keyword. Probably should be less than 30, I would say, to give you a much smaller preview, but this is what the context does. And this is all the power of a tree walker, where you can able to navigate up and down through the DOM tree. And heading is null, so it wasn't found a heading, and again it was found as part of chunk 7, and the score is 1.6. And this is extremely powerful, because if you can picture how you can convert this JSON output into like a spreadsheet, and I can then filter all the potential keywords that I found on a page by, I can say, well, I only want to see any opportunity with a score above a 10 on my Excel Google Sheet. I can quite easily filter that. Anything that only found in HTML headings, perhaps, or only keywords that were found in the first 3 chunks. So I know it's quite high up the page. And it essentially just takes it to a whole other level. It lets me really, really dial in on what I want and where it was found. So it's really, really powerful. Now, obviously this is very much a work in progress, so it still can take in different directions. So for example, what else can I do with this script? So I can make the chunking more dynamic. This is certainly something I'm interested in. Instead of having like more of a rigid, let's aim for 300 words, ideally maybe work out the word count of the page and divide it by some sort of number. So it's a bit more dynamic, for example. Identify if a page already contains an internal link to a destination URL. Probably not going to be able to do that, maybe elsewhere, but again, still thinking about it. I could perhaps, the output, instead of showing me everything, I could say, show me a smaller sample, ideally based on like the best scores that you get, and like cherry pick the best opportunities, and maybe send that to an LLM like ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever, and say, make me some anchor text and sentence replacement suggestions, for example. So that's quite easily done here as well. And also using the chunking methodology, I could perhaps kind of treat more like LLMs or AI, so I guess the way they interpret the page, which is more on the passage level. So chunk the content based more on a heading paragraph structure, and perhaps then convert it to embeddings, even push that to something like a vector database with an API. So all of that can be done through JavaScript on Screaming Frog, believe it or not. So there's a huge, and this is just beginning, I'm sure I can come up with way more use cases just for this alone. But it just shows you, like, hold on, Screaming Frog can actually do that? Like, I thought it was just a basic SEO crawler. But actually, with JavaScript snippets, you can do so much. And it's not just about being creative. So I intentionally chose really, really kind of more advanced sort of, almost like mini automation, really, that you can run on every single URL. But it just shows you the power of what you can do with it. So that was me. Hopefully you found it useful.